free QR code readers that you can load onto your phone. So we did design a game last year. I mentioned the games conference that I spoke at in Atlanta with Siege. And I worked with Deborah Thomas at Silly Monkey, who's located there, and we created a game that people who were attending the conference could play. It was primarily played through QR codes. We also had some 3D clues that you needed 3D glasses to read. We tried to play with a bunch of different technologies and ways for people to get clues and information. So that was fun.
Corinne, let me interrupt you for a second. For those
Sure.
who don't know, can you define what a QR code is?
Sure. So, oh, geez. I'm trying to think. I don't know if you have any images of one. That might be good to show. But it's basically a black and white. It looks a little bit like a barcode, only not so bar-ish. It's more it's patterned through blocks and black and white codes, and QR code readers, and they're becoming much more prevalent.
Well, the phones have them too, right? A lot of the phones have those built in.
Yes, a lot of them do, or you can download QR code reader apps for free.
Mm-hmm.
So, and very, very easy to get your hands on. I keep going places. It's funny, now that I use them for games, everywhere I go I notice where QR codes are. And I take my kids to Chick-fil-A every Tuesday night for chicken nugget night. It's tonight. And Chick-fil-A uses QR codes on all of their in-restaurant advertise, all of their materials. So if you're sitting at a table and they have something up that they want you to read, the QR code embedded on all of their advertising materials, even within the restaurant, to launch more information about what it is that they're promoting.
That's very clever.
And a lot of people probably aren't noticing them yet, but once you start looking for them, you'll see them everywhere.
Yeah.
And more people are using QR codes as a really quick way to communicate lots of information directly into your phone. So instead of giving a website, they might just have a QR code that you can quickly scan, and it'll send you to a website. But for other QR codes, like within the game, the QR codes actually would scan automatically into the game and score your points for you. So anytime you found when we ran the QR code game at Siege, when you scanned the clue in, it would log your clue for you. So it was a bit like a scavenger hunt. And I know Gina, who spoke this morning, actually ran a scavenger hunt game using QR codes at DevLearn while we were running Dr. Strangelearn. So it's definitely a low-cost and very fun way to get people engaged in doing actual tasks and being able to create a game out of it using those codes. But then some of the augmented reality is very expensive. So I mean, there's a very wide range. I mean, if to develop something like the Rock'em Sock'em Robot game, obviously is much more detailed and technology intensive than doing something with QR codes, which can be done very quickly and easily.
By the way, how was the performance on that Rock'em Sock'em Robot game? Was it pretty fast?
Sorry?
Well, how was the performance on that? Was it pretty fast? On the Rock'em Sock'em Robot game?
On the QR codes?
No, on the game.
Rock'em Sock'em, it was real time. It was fantastic. Yeah, no, it was, and I joke because I'm not competitive at all, but I played 3 rounds of Rock'em Sock'em Robots against Jed, who I hope is watching right now, and I beat him every time. So it was.
So you just don't think you're competitive.
I'm not. No, I'm not competitive at all. But it was basically real time. I mean, he and I were standing, pointing the phones at a target, which was this mat. And our robots were facing each other and fighting, and we had 3 different moves that we could block, and we could punch. I don't remember what the other one was. I think we could punch high and we could punch low, and that was all touch controlled on the phone. So very, very interesting from a girl who kind of cut her teeth in virtual worlds years ago in Second Life, and having the very complex controls initially of figuring out how to navigate in the virtual world, and going to a phone where you're basically controlling a 3D robot avatar in an environment by just some touch controls on a phone screen. Huge leaps and bounds, even in a matter of a few years. So.
Now, I participated in your Zombie Apocalypse, and I participated in your Doctor Strangelove
Yes.
augmented reality game. Both great, but I saw an evolution, I guess, in Doctor Strangelove, where you started to use more technology. You started to engage the learners more. So the dynamic was a lot different. And I was wondering what lessons did you learn? And I guess that was maybe a 1 or 2 year time span between the two. So what lessons
Yeah, it
did
was
you
a year.
learn over that time period in developing these games?
Yeah, so the very first ARG that we designed was for DevLearn 2009. And that was our Zombie Apocalypse game,
Oh, you
as
know
you
what? I
mentioned,
think
which I affectionately refer to as our grand experiment. And I know you had Brent Schlenker on a week or so ago, a couple weeks ago. But it was in large part because Brent gave us the green light. I had called him early in 2009 and said, we're investigating alternate reality games, and no one's really done anything yet related to learning. So we want to design one, and we want to launch it at DevLearn. And he said, great, that sounds fantastic. So go ahead. So we knew, at Tandem, we design games. So we know about game dynamics, but we weren't quite sure how that would look in an alternate reality game. We weren't sure. Back in 2009, people weren't as prolific in using Twitter and a lot of the social media sites as they are now. Even within a year, we saw tremendous change in the technology landscape and what people were comfortable with using. And so we made some guesses and we made some assumptions, and we actually thought that there'd probably be about 10 people playing, and it would be us and like 5 people we knew. So we really didn't think that as many people would play as they did. But by the time we got to DevLearn, we had over 200 people playing.
That's pretty cool.
The first year. And what we learned out of that, we learned a lot of things, actually. We learned a little bit about the group dynamics of how people were competing both with their own teammates and across teams. We learned a lot about people's desire to connect and network with the people that they were teammates with. And a lot of people, because we hadn't provided means for them to communicate, they had created their own team Facebook pages and their own networking sites so they could speak privately without the other teams knowing what they were doing, which we thought was very interesting. And so we built that in over the year. And we learned just a lot about how people interacted with content, what their patterns were, some of the limitations to access, depending on what your job is like. We made the first game mobile enabled, but not probably to the extent that we needed to, and that was one of the priorities over the next year. So between the Zombie Apocalypse and Doctor Strangelove, we did 4 more alternate reality games, some for conferences, some were for corporate events, and every one we had major lessons learned. And I would say just in general, one of the real challenges for anybody who is looking to create an alternate reality game for learning and launch it within an organization for learning purposes is that you can't underestimate the marketing of the game. One of the earmarks, or one of the key characteristics of alternate reality games in the entertainment world is that they're very subversive and secret, and the whole allure of them has been people going around trying to find secret clues. For learning and for our audiences, you don't want it to be so secret. You really want them to know that there's a game going on. You want them to know what the clues look like so that if they see one, they can identify it. And you really want there to be a lot of information about the game. There was one particular event that we ran that the event organizers decided that they wanted to really keep the game kind of secret, and they thought participants would just be motivated if they heard a little bit about it. And we had the lowest participation in that event of any game we ran.
It was secret.
Because they just, nobody knew, they didn't have enough time, they had other things going on, they didn't really know ahead of time. So, we definitely, that was a huge lesson learned. Like, if you want people to participate in a game that's a serious game that's for learning, you need to be very transparent and do a lot of the marketing and advertising and get people interested in other ways besides its secret society kind of feel. So
we have a question from Shift Guru, and he's asking, how would you pitch the value proposition of ARG, to a potential user?
So one of the challenges that we have in describing what an ARG is that it can really be designed for anything. Just as there are limitless number of games in game design, and people are still designing all kinds of different games to this day. We haven't run out of options for how people can play and interact with each other. It's very difficult. Alternate reality games and their design is very